The sound of one sigh after another as Mulan weaves at the doorway. No sound of the loom and shuttle. Only that of the girl lamenting. Ask her of whom she thinks. Ask her of whom she longs. There is no one I think of. There is no one I long for. Last night I saw the army notice. The Khan is calling a great draft. A dozen volumes of battle rolls, each one with my father's name. My father has no grown-up son, and I have no elder brother. I'm willing to buy a horse and saddle, to go to battle in my father's place. She buys a fine steed at the East Market, a saddle and blanket at the West Market, a bridle at the South Market, and a long whip at the North Market. She takes leave of her parents at dawn, to camp beside the Yellow River at dusk. No sound of her parents hailing their girl, just the rumbling waters of the Yellow River. She leaves the Yellow River at dawn, to reach the Black Mountains by dusk. No sound of her parents hailing their girl, just the cries of barbarian cavalry in the Yan Mountains. 10,000 miles she rode in war, crossing passes and mountains as if on a wing. On the northern air comes the sentry's gong. Cold light shines on her coat of steel. The general dead after 100 battles. The warriors return after 10 years. They return to see the Chinese sovereign, who sits in the Hall of Brilliance. The rolls of merit spin a dozen times, reward in the hundreds and thousands. The Khan asks her what she desires. I've no need for the post of a gentleman official. I ask for the swiftest horse, to carry me back to my hometown. Her parents, hearing their girl returns, out to the suburbs to welcome her back. Elder sister, hearing her sister returns, adjusts her rouge by the doorway. Little brother, hearing his sister returns, sharpens his knife for pigs and lamb. I open my east chamber door, and sit on my west chamber bed. I take off my battle cloak, and put on my old-time clothes. I adjust my wispy hair at the windowsill, and apply my bisque makeup by the mirror. I step up to see my comrades in arms. They are all surprised and astounded. We traveled 12 years together, yet did not realize Mulan was a lady. The back bounds here and there, whilst the doe has narrow eyes. But when the two rabbits run side by side, how can you tell the female from the male? The Ballad of Mulan was a folk song originally written in the 6th century by an unknown author somewhere in the northern dynasties of China. It recounted the tale of Mulan, a young woman who dressed herself in military garb and went to war in place of her father, who she believed was too weak and would die in the military. While its exact source cannot be determined, some scholars believe that the story is recounting the tale of a woman in the 5th century who fought with a toba against Aurora and along the northern border. Whether Mulan was a real person, or she represented a group of women, or it was just a work of fiction is uncertain as well. The ballad initially appeared in Yuefu, which was a collection of poems, many of which were based on real events and people, though they were often romanticized with many liberties taken. So was she a real person, a representation, or pure fiction? Unfortunately, we'll never know. But many villages from the region where she was supposed to have lived have claimed her as their own, even to this day. They might not be, though, if the story had not been popularized in 1593 in the play The Heroine Mulan Goes to War in Her Father's Place. It was written by a famous playwright of the late Ming Dynasty, Zhu Wei. He gave the lead character the family name Hua. Though other versions of the story throughout the ages changed this moniker, Hua Mulan has remained the most popular version of the character. These other versions I mentioned changed more than just her name. They expanded upon the story, placing her in various different times, but always kept the same basic idea of a woman disguising herself as a man to fight in the army in place of her father intact. 2 of the versions had her committing suicide rather than being forced to live under the control of a man in the end. Disney, of course, is the most recent version, bringing us both an animated version and a live-action version that releases the same day as this video. That's coincidence, right? Sure it is. But these are not the only movies made about the warrior woman. There have been no fewer than 11 movies made about her, and 5 television shows, in addition to the 9 books and 2 stage plays. Hua Mulan remains a figurehead of women's empowerment in the old world, especially when it comes to the military. But was she real? Some scholars have argued that a woman would not have been allowed in the military, and would not have been able to hide her gender. But there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of known examples of women disguising themselves as men to fight in militaries, and to work among men during times when women were not allowed to have most jobs. But the Ballad of Mulan says she kept up the ruse for 12 years, which does make things a bit more difficult. Now there is the fact that she was in a region where soldiers were in short supply, thus the draft, and in many wars, when manpower is low and women are discovered in the ranks, soldiers let them stay. This could also be one of the exaggerations these poems were wont to do. However, many of these same scholars also point to the fact that there's no direct evidence that Mulan was a real person. But then again, there's no direct evidence of the existence of any individual soldier at her rank and social status. Unfortunately, records of that age are simply too unreliable. There's nothing about the story that isn't possible, or that contradicts other facts, so it could go either way. The simple fact is, no one knows for certain. Anyone who says they know definitively that she did or did not exist is simply lying. We include her in our stories because, real or not, she is exemplary of a female hero in history, with a story worth repeating for over 1,000 years.